doing. Sophie, if you had a daughter, would you want her to do what you're doing?
I mean, I would let her decide. It's up to her decision.
But do you think as a mother you would want that?
I think that I would be supportive of it no matter what. Yes.
So it's not exactly shocking anymore, but Sophie Rain is right back in the spotlight with another wave of controversy building around her name. This time, the stakes feel a lot heavier because it's not just online drama, it's money, serious money. Over the past few months, Sophie has made it very clear just how much she's been earning through OnlyFans, and the numbers she's hinted at are massive. We're talking claims of up to $100 million in just a couple of years, which is the kind of figure that instantly grabs attention and raises eyebrows. She hasn't been quiet about it either, openly talking about her success and even encouraging other women to consider joining the platform and building their own income streams. But now, there's a new twist that could seriously shake things up. A political figure in Florida, someone aiming for the governor's seat, is reportedly pushing for a 50% sin tax on people who earn money from adult content. Since Sophie lives in Florida, that instantly puts her right in the middle of it. If this actually goes through, it wouldn't just be a small hit, it could take a huge chunk out of what she's been making. People are already saying that because she's one of the top earners on the platform, she could be one of the biggest targets when it comes to how this tax plays out. And when you look at the numbers being thrown around, it gets even more intense. Some estimates suggest she could end up paying around $50 million if everything lines up the way it's being proposed. Whether that sounds fair or completely over the top depends on who you ask. But either way, it hasn't stopped Sophie from speaking up. She's not staying quiet about it, and she's made it clear she doesn't agree with what's being planned. At one point, she even went on a televised discussion with Piers Morgan to directly address the situation and speak with the political figure behind the proposal. That alone shows how serious this has become.
For those who are not familiar with your work, how would you describe it?
Well, I post on many platforms. I post content on Instagram. I post content on TikTok and all the above. And I also post content on OnlyFans. And honestly, I do a little bit of everything. I do little dancing TikTok videos. I'll post Instagram photos. And then obviously my OnlyFans content.
And would you describe it as graphic, or what would you describe it as?
I mean, I wouldn't describe it as graphic, but it's definitely adult content for sure.
So what do you feel about James Fishbach and his plan to tax you 50% as a sin tax for being a sinner?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, it's ridiculous. It's very ridiculous. Florida already has no income state tax. It doesn't exist. So it seems very selective, and it seems like it's a punishment.
I mean, Sophie says that that she feels like this is a punishment. Why are you punishing her?
Well, hey, Sophie, good to meet you. It's not a punishment at all. What it is a deterrent. I think Sophie recognizes that our state was better off when young women aspired to be teachers, small business owners, doctors, and lawyers, as opposed to creating adult content. I can respect Sophie Rain as an individual and still respectfully call out that I don't want thousands of young women who are in high school today to feel like the only way they can make a living when they graduate is selling adult content, video, photos of themselves on the internet. And so, Sophie, look, with all due respect, I know you're from Florida, I'm from Florida, we both love our state. I want what's best for you, and I want what's best for every single woman in our state, and that's not to be objectified and exploited by the only owners.
Damn! Because it's no longer just online talk, it's turning into a full public debate. Sophie has been defending herself, explaining her side.
Never in my whole life did I think that I would wake up and see a Florida politician trying to start beef with me for clout. So he's proposing a sin tax on bops where we would have to pay 50% to the state on top of the 37 I already paid to the government. And I would be more than happy to pay that if multi-billion-dollar corporations were also being properly taxed. But surprise, they're not. I never usually get into politics, but there are clearly better ways to raise funds from actual corrupt businesses in our country. I think that people also fail to realize that there are so many creators on this platform that do this job because they're struggling. So to tax them like that when they're literally doing it just to support their families is sad. I would much rather continue donating directly to people in need because we all really know where our tax dollars go.
Trying to push back against the idea that she should be singled out or heavily taxed for the kind of content she produces. At the same time, there's still a lot of back and forth about what she actually posts. Sophie has said more than once that she's not strictly doing explicit material, pointing to her presence on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. where her content is more mainstream. But critics aren't convinced. They keep arguing that regardless of how she describes it, the material on her OnlyFans still falls under adult content in one way or another, and that's where most of her money is coming from. It's still one of those debates where everything comes down to context. A lot of people are saying this content was made for paying male subscribers who bought it for sexual reasons, so in their eyes, that puts it in the exact same lane as adult content overall. That's why this whole argument keeps getting messy so fast. Some people look at it and say the label is obvious, while others try to split hairs and act like there's some major difference. In reality, it depends on how you view the situation, and that's why Sophie keeps ending up stuck in the middle of these arguments. Now, to be fair, I can see both sides of this more than some people want to admit. I get where the criticism is coming from, because the content clearly exists in a space that gets people talking for a reason. But I can also see Sophie's side, because as far as the law goes, she is operating inside a legal business model. Even if the content got more explicit behind the paywall, people would still argue that she is working within rules that already exist. So from that angle, some of the outrage starts to look more moral than legal, and those are two very different conversations.
The point I would make is, what about, the argument that women are empowered to make their own decisions about their own bodies, their own choices, their own careers?
So let me ask you a question, Piers. If a woman is empowered to make their own decision about their own body, and a woman struggles to pay the rent, do we then encourage that woman to sell one of her kidneys to pay the rent and say it was her own decision? No,
she's not selling her kidney.
Women.
She's not selling her kidney.
Hold on.
Stop it. Get some help.
But where do you draw the line, Piers? She is imperiling her future as a mom, as a worker. You just heard Sophie say
how is she
was
imperiling her
fired from
future
her
as a
job.
mother? I don't get that.
Piers,
how does she imperil her future as a mother?
Well, let me tell you how. You just heard Sophie tell you that she was fired from her job when her boss found out her OnlyFans.
Yeah.
She was fired from her job.
Yeah.
And now, with all due respect to Sophie, what are you going to tell your daughter in 10 or 15 years when all of these images are all over the internet and your daughter is being bullied in middle school and was told that you guys were Christians? With all due respect, what do you say then? It creates a real weight, a real tension between a mom and her children, and of course, a worker and her employer. I don't want to encourage women to go on OnlyFans and then get fired from their job and then have a real fight at home about what mommy did on the internet last week.
Nice.
Sophie, if the number of women doing OnlyFans tripled in Florida tomorrow, would that be a good or a bad thing?
I think honestly, it would be a great thing. A lot of women are trying to find different ways to make more income in a, heavily damaged economy. So I think that there should be those opportunities out there for these women to make an income. I feel like as adults, we are all able to legally make our own decisions. And I think that we should also educate a lot more on all of these opportunities that you're speaking of, because I just don't think that we should be singling out any individual for what they choose to do.
At the same time, I do understand why some people support heavier taxes on this kind of industry. A big reason is that a lot of very young adults see platforms like OnlyFans as fast money the second they become legal adults, and that can pull them into a world they may not fully understand. There are also serious concerns about manipulation, pressure, and third parties trying to cash in on inexperienced creators. That part of the conversation matters, because people are not just reacting to Sophie, they're reacting to a much bigger system that keeps growing and getting more aggressive. That's also why critics keep bringing up influencer-style agencies and management groups that recruit new creators, build their pages, and take a cut of the profits. People argue that this turns the whole thing into a machine where the person on camera is not always the one with real power. And that is where the debate gets a lot deeper than just whether Sophie herself is right or wrong. It becomes about who benefits most, who gets used, and who gets left carrying the pressure once the money starts rolling in.
My point to Sophie is this, is if you want to keep doing this, then we're going to take 50% of what you earn and we're going to use it to raise public school teacher pay. Our public school teachers are not getting paid enough. We're going to use this as a resource to fund the empowerment of young women who have signed up to do something dignified, with all due respect, unlike you, and be a public school teacher, educating, inspiring, and motivating.
Do you know what,
the next
James?
generation.
You know what? Here's what I would say. I've got to end this debate. Here's what I would say. I've listened to both of you, and you both made good points. But honestly, that last statement you made was so pompous and patronising. Honestly, who are you to be the great moral arbiter of what young women do with themselves legally in the United States? Who are you to say if you become governor, you're going to take half her money in a state where they don't have even state income tax? It's like there's a real arrogance to this, that you've decided you are the moral arbiter of every Floridian. And it may be why you're trailing so badly in the polls. And Sophie, the good news for you is don't worry about it, because he's not going to win. So you're not going to end up giving Mr. Fishbach any money for his plans, much as it would be great to put more money into teachers in public schools. Of course it would be. But it won't be coming from you, Sophie Rain, because he ain't going to win.
Now, if tax money from that industry really was used for something meaningful, like improving schools, public services, or better pay for teachers and other workers, then a lot more people would probably see the idea as reasonable. That's the main catch, though. People only support that argument if the money actually goes where officials claim it will go. Otherwise, it just sounds like another flashy political promise. And that's why Sophie gets dragged into this so hard, especially when she talks about being generous, helping struggling people, and giving back. Once someone builds that image, the public starts watching every move twice as hard. Yeah, this is the point where Sophie Rain really starts to lose a lot of people. The way she talks about this makes it sound like he wants to wipe out OnlyFans completely, and that is not what's being proposed here. People would still be able to use the platform, and top creators would still be making huge money. Sophie herself would still be bringing in an amount most people cannot even imagine. So for a lot of critics, this is not about a full ban at all. It is more about cutting into the profits and making the business less attractive for new people thinking about jumping in fast. That is why some people are not buying her argument. They see this as a push for tighter rules, not some full shutdown. In their eyes, Sophie is acting like everything is being taken away, when really she is talking about getting a smaller slice of a massive pie. And once you frame it like that, the whole thing starts to hit different. A lot of people feel like she is skipping over the bigger social concerns and making herself look like the victim when she is still in a position to earn more than almost anybody else. Where things get even more heated is when Sophie starts talking like more women joining OnlyFans would be a great thing. That is where many people fully check out.
Out of interest, Sophie, I have to say, I mean this with no disrespect, but I'm not aware, I haven't viewed your work. What is it that makes you so popular?
I think that I'm just very transparent with my audience. I'm never over here encouraging people to try and join the site. I'm very clear on the pros and cons of it also, but I'm just very transparent.
So then hold on, what are the cons? Then what are the cons? What is the con? Let's be transparent. What is the con of joining?
I mean, exactly like I said, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that OnlyFans is a great site. Some of the points you are making are correct, like, you know, It's damaging to the future. And I want people to understand and educate themselves, but women still should be able to make that decision for themselves at the end of the day. And they shouldn't have to worry about
I'm raising a tax to disincentivize and deter it. I'm not banning it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That is what he's doing. Sophie, if you had a daughter, would you want her to do what you're doing?
I mean, I would let her decide. It's up to her decision.
But do you think as a mother you would want that?
I think that I would be supportive of it no matter what. Yes.
To critics, that sounds wild, because they believe she is helping normalize an industry that already pulls in a lot of attention, pressure, and risky decisions. They also think there is a business angle behind it. The more this space grows, the more money flows through it, and the more top names like Sophie stay on top. So when she talks about it in a positive way, some people hear motivation, but others hear marketing. And then there is the argument people keep throwing around about empowerment. A lot of viewers are tired of hearing that every choice in this space has to be framed like some bold statement of freedom. In their opinion, most creators are there for one simple reason: money. That does not mean every person has the same story, but critics feel like calling it empowerment every single time is just a clean way to avoid the harder conversation. The bigger issue, to them, is that once content like that is online, it can affect privacy, reputation, relationships, and future job options in ways people may not fully think through at the start. A lot of people believe the cost goes way beyond money. In their view, once someone joins that world, the backlash can hit from every direction. Friends start looking at you different, relatives may lose respect, and that image can follow you for years. That is why critics keep saying the biggest benefit is the money, because to them, that is the only part of it that looks appealing on the surface. Everything else can come with a heavy trade-off, especially once the content is public and people start attaching that label to your name. And that is why this tax argument keeps getting framed the wrong way by some people. From what supporters are saying, the goal is not to ban OnlyFans or erase it overnight. The goal is to make it less tempting as a fast-track option by cutting deeper into the profits. That applies to men and women alike. The message is basically this: if someone still wants to do it, they can, but the financial reward may not look as huge once a major tax takes a slice out of it. Supporters of the idea think that could push more people toward jobs they see as more stable, more respected, and more connected to everyday society. Then you get to Sophie Rain, and this is where people start reading between the lines. A lot of viewers are convinced she has been indirectly promoting that whole industry just by constantly showing off how much money she makes. They do not think that kind of posting happens for no reason. In their eyes, there are only a couple of explanations. One, it stirs up outrage and attention, which keeps her name trending and brings more eyes to her content. Two, it sends a loud message to other women about how much money can be made, which can make the platform look way more attractive than it really is. That is why some critics call it a marketing strategy instead of transparency. They do not believe she is sharing those numbers just to be open with her audience. They think it is part of a bigger business move, whether that means driving more subscriptions, building more headlines, or helping normalize the space so more people enter it. To be fair, that is still speculation, and it is only fair to say it as opinion rather than fact. But from a public perception angle, that is exactly why people stay suspicious. They look at the pattern and think there is more going on than simple honesty. And if this politician actually got elected and really did direct that tax money into things like teacher pay, schools, and other public jobs, that is where supporters say the argument gets much stronger. In that case, they would see a clear public benefit instead of just another political stunt. And that's why this whole thing feels so strange when you really look at it. In a lot of videos and posts, Sophie Rain keeps talking about how generous she is, how much she gives back, and how she likes helping people who are struggling more than she is. She has built a big part of her image around being charitable, helping people in need, and showing that she does more with her money than just spend it on herself. That is exactly why some people think this situation should be easy for her to work with, if she really stands on everything she says. Because even if this tax actually did get passed, and even if a large chunk of that money went toward teachers, schools, and other important public jobs, Sophie would still be making a huge amount of money from her content. She would still be rich, still be successful, and still be in a better position than most people could ever dream of. So from the outside, it kind of looks like she could still come out on top while also being tied to something that helps other people too. That is why a lot of viewers are looking at this like it could be a win-win, at least on paper. Still, this whole situation is messy, and people are clearly split right down the middle. Some think she is being unfairly targeted, and others think this is long overdue. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the Beyond Fame channel, share the video, and I'll see you in the next one.